Kia ora and welcome to the Can podcast. I'm the host, Warwick Slow, and today's guest is Derek Handley from Aera. Aera's mission is to help more Kiwis get into their first home. But Derek also has a very interesting past in business. We talk about his relationship with Richard Branson, what it was like being on the board at New Zealand's largest media company, as well as being on the list to be on one of Virgin Galactic's trips to space. It's a very interesting story, and I think you'll really get value from it. We also dive into why he's gone back to school and has recently got his degree at Harvard, hence the attire. If you're watching this, you'll be able to see it as well. If there's one thing you could do that would really help us here at Can, it would be by giving the Can podcast a follow or a subscribe. It goes a long way into helping me justify investing even more into this resource, and I enjoy doing it, so it goes a really long way. Other than that, let's get stuck into it. But if you really want to look down the camera and get the message across.
Yep. Okay, got it.
Derek,
it's a big fat pencil. What is it? Pencil.
It's a pencil. It's a pen.
Oh, got it.
Shaped as a pencil.
From the hotels.
From a hotel.
Interesting. Good on them. It's not very eco-friendly, but
it's
anyway.
not, is it?
No.
But then I thought, they've given it to me and I've used it.
Yeah, so they're winning.
Exactly.
Because I was in a hotel yesterday and I looked at the pen and I was like, I'm not taking it. It's not interesting. So there
it's
you go.
interesting enough. And tell you what, if you're a really good guest, you can take this.
Thank you.
I often think about the economics of like how bad certain events are that we do. And one of the conferences that we go to, they have a pen which is cardboard. And the only plastic bit is like this little tip with the obviously the biro part on the inside.
Merch. Just getting into the merch game.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah. So we're
keyrings. It's pretty cool, right?
Keyrings. You've got t-shirts,
caps,
which look really
patches, cool. Yeah. Got some Lego coming.
Nice.
That's right.
Because you updated your branding, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Changed the spirit of it. So.
Okay. Should we jump into the more structured conversation?
We already started.
Yeah, no, sure. All good. Maybe we could cut some of that in. It's good fun.
Good.
But Derek, co-founder of Aera.
Yep.
You've been a serial entrepreneur for a long time, and I think this is your latest thing that you're working on. I'm keen to find out a little bit more about Aera and how it works.
Sure. You want me to tell you?
Yeah.
So Aera is the first brand in New Zealand that is 100% dedicated to the journey that all first home buyers are on. So first home savers, actually, people who are saving to buy a first home. The insight that I built this company on was that there was nobody really existing to serve them all the way up from the beginning to the end, and that the experience had multiple steps. So Aera exists to take you from the very beginning, where you've almost got nothing and you haven't saved anything, all the way through to literally moving you in and insuring you into a house. So we have an app that's an experience that is partly a savings app platform, partly a coach, partly like a roadmap to get you a plan to get to your first home. This month, we're also launching an extensive first home finder section in there where lots of brand new homes are featured. And essentially the app will follow and mirror the journey that you're on. So you're saving, you're setting a goal, you're creating a strategy as to how do you get to that first home as fast as possible. We then have a coaching team, then a mortgage coaching team, and then a first home finding team, which finds you a home. So in theory, you can start and finish your whole first home journey with Aera, except a building inspector and a lawyer. And that's kind of what's happening now.
Fantastic. And it seems like New Zealanders have always been obsessed with property. Are you finding that the younger generation, is that maybe a demographic that you're working with? Are they still obsessed with property as the rest of us?
We're working with lots of, I would say, millennials who are kind of just fighting their way to get that home before it passes them up. And then in the member base, there's a long tail of more younger, I would say, Gen Zs who are a bit further away. But if you're like a mid or late 20s something in Auckland or Christchurch, you're often a lot closer than you think. So we're working with a lot of those kind of people too, particularly singles, people who are going to buy together. I don't think our customer base or our focus is people obsessed with property. I think it's people who are obsessed with the goal of having a home to raise a family in and, to have some security and to have a place that they can call their own. So we're not really about the idea that this is an investment for financial purposes, other than owning a home is a really good way to save, have discipline, have a budget, be committed to something. And as it grows in value, as you go in age, it's a really good retirement, strategy to help you have something of value as you get older.
It's also something tangible that people can live in and get benefit from that.
Exactly. Yeah, of course you get all that stuff too, which is a massive part of it, especially if you've got kids and you want to be able to be connected to your community and your school and all these things that become more difficult if you don't have any tenancy security, that you can be kicked out at any time. The person who owns your home, their daughter comes back from England and they want to live in the house and they boot out their tenants. Like this stuff is a criteria, feature, a bug of New Zealand, like it doesn't exist elsewhere. You have professional landlords who don't want their tenants to leave in Hong Kong or New York. Like they just want you to live there and you can live there forever. Whereas here, it's very hard to have a place that you think you could, live and grow old in and rent.
And a lot of the time I see in your marketing messaging, you approach people on the street, a lot of the time people aren't aware they're so close to being able to own a property.
Yeah, so I think this is another thing around basically stories that we tell each other as New Zealanders. And I don't know, I was away for a very long time. I came back to New Zealand and I got sucked into the same story, which is the average house is $1 million, you need 20%. And if you look at the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand, the CEO who's often on social and in the media, they will continually repeat this. It's $1 million an average house and it's 20% deposit. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners know there's many different ways to get into a home, but if you buy a brand new home, you're not under the LVR exemptions and you should be able to get there with 10%, even 8%. And that's an infinitely faster way to buy a house than being in this time warp that you think it's 200 grand to buy a house. And additionally, the median first home is normally like 600 or 650, and so your $60,000 versus $200,000 conversation as a deposit is totally different. And so we're on a mission to help as many people as possible understand that actually, if you're 30 and you've got the average Kiwi save and you've got the average income, you could probably buy a home within a year if you set your sights more appropriate to what is a first home, not a forever home. And that's something that's between 500 and maybe 700 for most people.
And that's quite achievable in a lot of places in New Zealand.
100% achievable. Almost everywhere in New Zealand, it's achievable in a really inspiring way. So if you go to Canterbury and Christchurch, you can get a home that's got 3 bedrooms, it's got land, it's got garden, it's all on one level. It's not, multiple townhouses put together. If you're in Auckland, you've got to get to the grips of reality. That's just not the way it's going to be, for you to begin with. And your first home in Auckland is most likely going to be some sort of a semi-detached or, townhouse. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing, we get a lot of comments on our social like, oh, you can live in a shoebox, but you're going to own the shoebox. Like, it's not exactly a shoebox. It also can be 70 or 80 square meters. It's plenty of space if there's 2 people and a baby. So a lot of people pissing and moaning about what's possible, what's not possible. It just riles me up because the main thing is, do you want to own a home or not? If you want to own a home, stop bitching and moaning and we'll help you get there as fast as possible. You got to cut out stuff that you're spending maybe too much on. You got to cut your, dream vision and get with reality. And if you make certain decisions, you can get there a lot faster than you think and any of your friends probably think.
I think the Kiwi dream of the quarter-acre section, big 4-bedroom house is...
In Auckland.
It's
difficult, but not so much in other parts of the country. So,
Absolutely.
People live outside of Auckland. It's 3+ million of them. So...
South of the Bombays, everyone's like, what the hell's going on here?
We're helping lots of families in Christchurch and Canterbury, and there's nothing wrong with the homes they're getting. Yeah,
Absolutely.
they pretty much fit the Kiwi dream, slightly smaller section, but still a lot of what you typically expect if you were to draw a picture of what you thought your first home would be,
And half the time, like the journey you take people on, it's just saying that it is possible. That's almost the hardest part because it's like going to the gym. The hardest part is putting your shoes on. Sometimes a lot of people just go, I'll never own a home. All they hear in the media is that it's going to be too difficult, too expensive, property prices going up.
Yeah, so it's a myth we kind of telling each other, and part of the job is to break the myth. Actually, we wrote a book about it. I should get it. It's in my bag.
Go on, grab it.
This has just gone in the shops.
All right. What do we got here?
So this is now in sale in all good bookstores, Paper Plus, the airport, most Whitcoulls, came into stores last month. It's basically the first book that's written about how to buy your first home, what the strategy is, not you're going to need a mortgage broker, you're going to need a building inspector, here's what a sale and purchase agreement contract. Who cares about any of that stuff if you don't even know how to get to the finish line, get to the start line of buying a home. So this is essentially telling you all the stories around how the banking system works, what your debt's doing to you, having credit cards, all this kind of stuff, and what the myth of a 20% average home price is versus what a 10% brand new build is. So it's essentially like, if you read at the end of it, you should be able to figure out what your own roadmap is to get to that first home. And as long as like maybe there's two of you and you're the average 30-year-old, yeah, it's kind of as a story of, okay, you could probably do that in a year if you thought about it differently.
And there's a unique point that Aera does, and it involves the savings account that you've set up. How does that work? And how do you get around people thinking that it's almost like too good to be true?
So you're talking about the credits that we give people?
Correct.
Yeah. So because we're doing everything, let's say we onboard people, they're self-learning, it's education, there's savings accounts, there's the coaching, there's the mortgage brokers, there's the home finding part of it, and soon there'll be insurance. We obviously get to aggregate more and more of this kind of commission, right? We get transaction revenue that covers multiple parts of the journey. So my theory is the more that people digitally self-serve themselves along the way as they get towards closer to being able to buy a home, I can help tens of thousands of people at once using our app and the digital tools we've got. And eventually, when they get to the finish line, we have to obviously be much more hands-on, and human needs to help you get your mortgage and a human needs to help you find a home. But in theory, if we can help more and more people that help themselves, we can take less and less of the revenue that we get. So what happens in Aera is as you hit certain milestones in the app, you start building up to $10,000 worth of like credits, which kind of behave like air points. And if you then finish the whole process with us and buy a home, then we contribute 10K to your deposit. So that means you're going to save basically another probably a year of savings and get into that house even earlier, which in the long run in New Zealand, the earlier you're in a home, the better, because of the macro compound annual growth rate of a house, obviously setting aside the last 3 years. So essentially we take that commission and we share it with customers, and up to 10,000 if they complete the whole life cycle with us. And yeah, a lot of people look at the website and like, how do you do it? That seems weird. What is the scam? And really, it's just about believing that we'll be able to have a much lower cost to serve, scale a lot bigger, and help lots and lots of people, and therefore maybe can take a much shorter margin, which will then in turn help people get there 1 or 2 years earlier.
I know you work with mortgage advisors already. You've got some in-house as well.
Yeah.
Like what are some things that you think the rest of the industry could be learning or engaging with to help as well?
Well, I mean, I'm very new to this whole field, so I'm looking at it from very fresh eyes. I'm looking at building a brand that exists only and solely to focus on turning first home savers into first home buyers. And so we've got our own in-house mortgage team, because when you're building a company, you kind of want to keep as much in-house to understand how it all works. But in the second half of the year, we're going to open up a way to partner with other, brokers, maybe they're independent brokers who want to add another string to their bow. And essentially, we will be kind of partnering up with our first home finder team. So if they've got someone that, they think has only got 8% deposit, but actually if they had the 10 grand that we're going to give them, they'd actually have 10 or whatever it might be. And they would definitely be up for buying a brand new home, then we would complement that service. So that we'd partner with maybe a small number of individual brokers across the country to begin with who might be interested in adding that to their repertoire in a way that maybe some of their competitors can't. And so they might do the broking, and then they say, we're part of Aera's broader network, which enables you to first get access to this 10K, but secondly, also someone's going to be in your corner to help you find a home and literally hunt one down until we find one for you. So that will be something that we're launching at the end of this month to a select number of, advisors. And we're currently taking, interest from anyone who's interested in being a part of this mission.
Okay. How do people find you?
Well, they could just email me, Derek, DEREK @aera.nz. That's probably the fastest way. Or on our socials.
You're everywhere.
Yeah. Not yet.
So you've also got Aera, the venture capital firm. You've been involved in a number of businesses over the years, and a lot of them have been focused around sustainability and giving back and the bigger purpose. How do you balance that? What capitalism needs to do, which is make money for shareholders. How do you balance that with ethical directions that you want to take your businesses?
It starts with what's the North Star? So the North Star of this company is, as I said, to get as many Kiwis into their first homes as fast as possible. It's not to do that in order to generate mortgage revenue or sell houses. It's to do that to create a country where people have certainty of tenancy for their for their family. It's a way to ensure as many people as possible get the mindset and psychology of saving, goal setting, being good with money. Because if you want to buy a house, you have to sort out your own shit and get good with money. And it's to maximize the chance that as many Kiwis have a possibility of a dignified and prosperous retirement, because New Zealand doesn't have a solid enough KiwiSaver system. There's been some changes announced last month, but it's still not enough. Like if you look at the US, Australia, UK, the amount that people have to put into their super is much higher, like 14, 17%. And we're still stuck in these low single digits. It's not enough to save through that current KiwiSaver mechanism to retire with dignity. Okay. And assuming that you're even going to get, NZ Super. Let's say that pays for your. It may not be there at the moment. It's not going to be affordable because of the way it's structured, and this generation gets to that age. Where's the money coming from? So to me, because New Zealand's a place that's amazing, and for the next 50 to 100 years, people are going to keep wanting to move here, particularly the 2 to 3 billion in India and China, that is going to keep increasing the population in New Zealand, which will keep pushing pressure on house prices, land prices. It's very hard to see for this generation, Gen Z, younger millennials, that house prices will not continue to grow. Now, they might not continue to grow at a 7% CAGR, but even if they're growing at 5%, it's very hard to decide when you're 40 that you want to buy a house unless you've decided earlier to make steps. So to me, the North Star is to have a country that in 20 or 30 years, I have done something about trying to make sure that as many people are in a good position as possible, versus a country where, 70% of them don't even have a home and they're going to retire at 70. Where are they going to live? Like this, I think, is a genuine issue because rent also goes up around 4.3% a year. No one thinks about this. So just to outpace rent is a very high bar of discipline and savings required. So the median household rent at the moment is about 600 and something. At that current rate, in 20 years, just for your median household rent, you need to pay $80,000 a year in rent. So just to rent in 20 years a house for you and 2 kids, you'll need to earn before tax, obviously a lot more than 80,000. And once you start to think about that, it's a very frightening prospect. And that's why if you've started and you're young and you've bought a 500 or 600K shoebox or whatever you want to call it, at least you're on the journey and you're on a boat that's going up with everybody. So the company we're building is not solving the housing crisis. It's gaming the system to enable as many people to live within it. The crisis itself somehow, some way needs to be solved in other methods.
And you've been based overseas for a long time. I know you've lived in New York. Not that you've been necessarily based there, but you've just graduated from Harvard, hence the the jumper. Sorry, stitch up a little bit there. I didn't tell him it was going to be recorded. And
Video, I didn't know the video.
So, I mean, was this something that you viewed from afar?
No.
And you were like, I need to come back and fix this?
No, I came back and it was the peak crisis. So it was COVID, housing crisis, this big, 1 or 2 year period where people were like, this is terribly like outrageous kind of existential type of thing. And that really piqued my curiosity. Obviously it came back, the market came back, but I was at that point hooked on, wow, how did I not know all this stuff? How did I not? Because I didn't buy a house when I was in America. I bought a house when I came back or a little bit before. So if I'd known house prices had consistently gone up 7% a year, I'd have bought a house here much earlier, right? I had homes in the US, but I would have at least bought something here. And so it became a curiosity about why is it like this? And then when I came home, I still had friends who were my age or family, and they hadn't bought a home and they were really struggling to. And that was also shocking to me. I was like, wow, why is this so hard? Or why does it appear to be so hard? And then I became kind of hooked on the problem and spent 1 or 2 years thinking about it, looking at it, and then decided, okay, if no one is going to do anything significantly different, then I feel like an onus to try, because I think I have a set of skills and experiences that maybe are different to other people's. And also I have a sense of like fearlessness to look at an industry that might look quite intimidating and complex. When I was pitching this idea a couple of years ago, we're going to do all these things, string them together in one brand, and we're going to be across all these different risk profiles, savings account, insurance, brokerage. People were like, that's a lot. But that's what it will take to build something different. And, that's what we're doing. So that became, the onus to start it.
Okay. And like you said, you've had a lot of different experiences with different companies. You're on the board at Sky TV for 7 years.
Yeah.
It's, New Zealand's largest media company. But there must have been some great lessons getting from that type of experience.
Yeah, I mean, being on public companies' boards is also interesting. Sky, it had its own existential crisis. It was the first company in New Zealand to be attacked by the largest companies in the world from afar. It's like lobbing, nuclear missiles from Silicon Valley, from Google, Netflix, and Amazon to decimate a company's base, which has always been domestic and terrestrial through satellites, right? No one's really written this story in this sense, but it's the first Kiwi startup, because Sky was a startup in New Zealand, to have built a base strength and then be looking down the barrel of death because the largest companies in the world were literally coming at it remotely. And so I was brought on because of that crisis, like how are we going to transition to the internet? And it was very interesting trying to figure out how a big company navigates that, because you have this kind of innovator's dilemma where everyone's paying for the satellite, but they all want to move on to, digital, and watching how challenging it is to change a big juggernaut. Our solution as a board and as a team was to merge with what was then Vodafone. And we thought that was a great strategy to protect and augment, two New Zealand companies to successfully prepare for the future that's a different one from the past. And New Zealand has a different set of problems with this Commerce Commission that often makes very dumb decisions that make no sense. When the competition against Sky was not Spark and Lightbox, it was Apple, Google, Netflix, and they blocked the merger of, Vodafone and Sky. So that was a whole other experience. Like, why would you do that when you're trying to protect so many local jobs and such a big thing at risk here, which is not about competition between New Zealand companies. It's about these global giants, attacking us. So it's very interesting kind of looking at stuff from such a high level and then going down to like, how do you get a mortgage license? Like this is kind of the altitude shifting that, being on boards and being a founder, you kind of interact with.
And speaking of altitude, you still have plans to go on the Virgin Galactic to space?
If they ever go, I'm going. Yes. Apparently 2027, but that would be like, God, I don't believe them anymore.
Because you started, you've worked with Richard Branson, and was it the B Corporation that was like your...
It was like the older statesman to the B Corp. So B Corps are like a certification movement for mostly small companies, and mostly like it's ended up becoming, for smaller businesses to verify that they are purpose-driven and they have a stakeholder view of capitalism, like thinking about community, society, and their staff and profits kind of as a holistic, view. The B team, which is what we had set up, was almost like the corporate CEOs version of that, like corporate leaders who were trying to use their companies as an engine for social or environmental good. So we created an alliance of those kinds of leaders from all around the world. And they did a whole series of interesting things together, and they still do. I think it's currently chaired by the CEO of IKEA, which on its own has a very incredible sustainability story. And, so that was interesting. It's a non-profit. So it was another startup, but it was a non-profit. But you have the same issues, building a team, raising money. You just have to raise a different kind of money, building a brand, all that kind of stuff.
Nice. And what was the first interaction with Richard Branson like?
I actually first met him here when he came in 2011 for, I think it was the rugby. And those are just kind of like, nervous chit chats. But the conversation that led to me co-creating the B team with him was at his home in Necker Island. And I had finished up with a previous company called the Hyper Factory. And I decided I was going to donate a year of my life the next year to interesting things that were trying to solve useful problems, interesting problems in a useful way. And by the end of the evening, he was like, yeah, I've got this idea. I want to bring this coalition of leaders together to look at how does business play a role as a force for good. We don't have anyone to help build it. And so that was the first kind of meaningful interaction in a very kind of, I'd read about these kind of things before. They're like mythology. Like if you get the right angle, the right story, the right connection, all of a sudden it just happens. And so literally it was a game of pool, a glass of wine, and then the end of the evening, I was co-founding something with Richard Branson. It was fucking wild. And it gets even wilder. The next day in the morning, he's like, I'm going to Africa at 12. Do you want to come? I was like, okay. And the plane leaves at 12. I was like, okay, I'll pack my bags. And so my wife and I were like, that was surreal. And we literally 3 hours later were on his plane going to Africa.
Dude. That's
it was crazy.
And I mean, how do you even get to Necker Island in the first place?
That was through this galactic, through this community of people who'd signed up early, of which there are about 300 of us. And so there are lots of events and things that you can participate in along the way. And so I, went to that, and that's kind of how that happened.
Because randomly, I've actually been to Necker Island too.
Oh, cool.
Not to see him. It was for a private event for an old company I worked for, and we were setting up like a private party on the island.
Oh, yeah, you can do that too. Yeah.
What a place.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There's lemurs walking around, just like trying to have lunch, and they're just like tugging in to give me some food. It's just, what a place.
It's a very special place.
God, good memories.
Yeah.
So what did you do in Africa?
Well, he has a non-profit there. We visited a variety of kind of those associated activities, but he was also building a safari park in Kenya. And so we drove across the plains like in a Land Rover Defender, two crazy Australians just skidding across this thing at warp speed to get to the site where he was building this camp, this new safari hotel, and there was nothing. There was like 2 tents and the local tribes. And so he was going for a site visit to see what was going on and to talk to the tribes about what he was intending to do. And so that first night we were in the middle of nowhere, staying in tents with 2 Aussies, a couple of tribes people, and cooking over billies and stuff for him to meet the locals and communicate what his wishes were for that project. That was what we were doing. And now that's a amazing, safari park, camp, which I haven't been to, but yeah, I should go. Yeah.
It's one of those moments where you get offered to go for a trip to Africa with Richard Branson. You don't say no.
No, I don't think you do.
Sorry, I've got something on my calendar in a couple of days.
Yeah, I've got a meeting.
Yeah. Now the Aera VC, the venture capital, that's also focused around sustainability. Are you still quite involved in that?
Aera VC it started as a climate fund, so we're mostly focused on climate investing, so technologies that are reversing climate change. I'm still very involved in the investing side. Yes, so we still review all the opportunities. We're still investing at the moment, so we are looking at companies constantly. We've been pretty active this year. I think we've done maybe 6 deals this year. Most companies are overseas or all around the world, and they're all doing something, radical to reverse climate change or address, that issue. But we do have some other wacky stuff like space technologies, some different companies that are doing interesting things in health. But by and large, it's around climate and resilience. And
there was it's really difficult to research you because you've got so many parts to go down where, a lot of the time, like the guests that we're talking to, they're like mortgage advisors, financial advisors, like they've got like a few interesting parts, but seems like you've gone down a million rabbit holes in your career. What was the connection with Rocket Lab that you had previously?
Not Rocket Lab. I've had Dawn is a space company in New Zealand we backed. Yeah, I don't have any connection with Rocket Lab, but we backed a company that some staff members that had worked at Rocket started a company called Dawn, which they're building a space plane that basically can take off from any runway and go into space and deploy satellites and things like that, almost like a taxi, which is another extraordinary company coming out of New Zealand. And again, a kind of a set of people that, they're very young in their 20s and an idea that just no one in the world has tried. And, those kinds of things are extraordinary, to be a tiny part of. And
how does that line up with sustainability?
That particular idea? Well, so the fund, part of it, we have a part of the fund called Frontier, which is like, what's at the frontier of humanity, where you don't quite know what the benefit of something might be. But they had a green propulsion product, which was for moving satellites around in a much more sustainable way and not using like a really toxic chemical. And the sustainability vision around space and access to space is that satellites have a huge power to improve the condition of basically what life on Earth is like, including being a much better tool to monitor and manage everything that we're worried about, whether it's climate change, biodiversity loss, all those kind of things. Without these incredible arrays of lower Earth satellites, it's very hard to kind of get a gauge of how we're tracking on a lot of things. So, there's sometimes you got to think more broadly about what is the role of this company and how is it a positive thing, for the world. So I think we learned about climate change through early space technologies in the first place. Like, oh, these things are happening because you can kind of see them from up here,
And you're like growing up, what was it like in your household? Because I know your brother's also an entrepreneur like yourself. Like what were your parents like? Were they?
My mum and dad had like a small business, a trading business. I grew up in Hong Kong, which is a very capitalist society. And everyone wants to be what they call tycoons. Everyone wants to be like mega wealthy. And then I spent my teenage years in New Zealand, which is obviously the opposite. And so you kind of end up in this hybrid, and maybe that's how come I've ended up like this. But we were always talking about work and business and how do you trade or do stuff. And so at high school, I was always doing something, making some sort of business. At university, and then straight after graduating, I pretty much started my first company within 6 months. And they've always been encouraging. My parents were not encouraging when I said I was going to quit my job after 6 months. I thought they'd be excited, but they were not. They were like, oh, that doesn't sound right. But honestly, I think those first few years are the best to do anything that's high risk. You can spend 10 years doing high risk stuff. You're going to learn so much. So that was my approach. And then recently I've been like, okay, maybe I should be a little bit less high risk. And then I started another company. I don't know. Maybe I'll stop starting companies.
Have you always been a bit of a risk taker?
Yeah, I'm more risk taking than I think most entrepreneurs. Maybe because at some point you kind of want to take less risks, but they're always calculated. Venture capital is, risky, but it's always calculated. Obviously, you need to believe this company is going to be having a huge chance of success, but you also know that it could be zero.
It must be a trait that entrepreneurs have. And I just think back to, this is anecdotally, I was chatting to the sister of the guy who started our company, Chuck. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I was like, was it like growing up with him? And she was like, he was just a big risk taker.
Yeah. Yeah, but actually, physically, I'm not such a risk taker. Like with my own body and stuff, I'm very cautious.
You're wearing your seatbelt. You're not riding motorbikes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very cautious. Like if I'm skiing or I'm very take it, carefully.
No, fair enough. But in business.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah, exactly. What's the worst going to happen? What's already happened to me? I've lost everything all before. So it's like, oh, that's done. That didn't hurt. I'm alive. I mean, it did hurt, but I'm alive.
Yeah, you're still here. And what happened there?
Early on after uni, I just had some, fire, just crashed and burned, and you just kind of have to start over again. So that's okay. And then as you're building companies, that you often get very close to that as well. So you get very used to the whole thing maybe falling down on top of you.
You're one invoice away from
one bad decision or wrong decision or stroke of luck away in certain situations. And so you start building up a good muscle of how to recognize those further in advance and hopefully avoid them next time. So it's much less, it doesn't really distress me now, but when you're in your early 20s, it's quite stressful.
And what are some of those key indicators that things are about to go?
I don't know. I think it all depends on everybody's situation, what they're building. So I don't think there's any general, rules of thumb that I could probably say.
Yeah. I guess you'd get a bit of a sixth sense for that type of thing when it's coming up, especially if you've been there before.
It depends on the situation. I'm looking at the data that I've got. Like, is there anything that's convincing me we're heading one way or the other? Those kinds of things.
The story I'd like to find out more about is the Hyperfactory and iPhone connection.
Yeah. Well, that was the first company we built. So built the company based on the idea that we were going to move from a web-based world to a mobile phone-based world.
This was like early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we got our first personal computer at home around that time. So exciting moments.
Yeah. So that was all it was built on, just a vision. This was going to happen at some point. We can build some technology to make it more seamless for companies. We can then innovate our way as the industry evolves, as the technology evolves. And that's the company that took me to the US, and it got bought, and I had built a really large, for me anyway, a couple of hundred people around the world, had up 80 developers in India, had offices in the US, Australia, China, had a head office in New Zealand, learning how to do all this stuff, be a 24-hour operation in your mid-late 20s. And then, financial crisis came and basically had to fire almost, more than half of the people and learn how to survive and cut your cloth to meet the market. But yeah, it was really, really fun. Yeah.
And
lots of fun.
What point did you exit that business?
Well, it was 9 or 10 years old. Yeah. It was doing very well. And it was like peak kind of interest in, mobile as a future medium. And it just a media company in the US acquired it.
Now, this isn't your first book that you've written. You've written Heart to Start, and that is more about your journey. I think probably a good deep dive if people are interested today.
Yeah,
it's probably a good. If there's
that's true. It's out of print. It's in the library.
Surely it's on Kindle or something like that.
Probably, yeah. Probably on Trade Me or something. I spoke at an event in Christchurch yesterday, and 3 people had it. They were like, "Hey, I read this book." So yeah, it's basically the story of building something. And I wrote it so early because all the stories that I'd read of the business people I loved, they were written when they were like 50. And so the pages about the beginning were like just 2 pages, because they have so much to talk about. And I was like, no, I wanted to write this now because I want all of the, all the struggle to be in there.
Because the B-sides and the greatest hits.
It's so hard to remember all that stuff. So that's really what it is. It's like the journey of discovery of what it is to be a person as you're kind of building a company and learning all these things about yourself and about everything, and having this vision to build a global startup to come out of New Zealand, and all the ups and downs, the near-death experiences, the highs, the lows, and then all the way ending up to how did you end up working with Richard Branson? So it kind of ended up those 2 bookends of and then it's just kind of stopped at that point. But I loved writing it, and I think it's still one of the few guides in New Zealand of what actually it's like inside when you're building something.
And do you think you'd do another version?
I would definitely write more books for sure. Yeah, I love writing. And I just did a thesis, as you said, I went to university. I did a thesis on performance and spirituality. My degree is in religion that I just graduated. And the thesis was an intersection of elite athletic performance and a certain aspect of Hindu religion. And the overall kind of essence of it is that in the moment of performance, it's about decoupling from any expectations and outcomes that you might want. And it's kind of like just play by play, doing your role, participating in the world, 1 foot in front of the other, and being unattached from all of the potential associated negatives or positives. And to me, that's a really interesting idea. And there's a number of, elite athletes that have performed and executed in that way. Like Lisa Carrington speaks about it. Kobe Bryant spoke about it. And so it's about not having this deep desire to win or this deep fear of losing. It's about being in the motion of just what is it to execute at a high level consistently. And so the thesis is pretty interesting, but I think I'll write a book about it that's more like, layman's version of how do you practically kind of do this. Because it's very different to like positive thinking, which is quite prevalent in the psychology space around self-improvement or peak performance. And it's also different from mindfulness, which is like meditating and accepting what comes at you and, this is a terrible situation, but I accept it and I'm moving it forward. It's something in the middle. It's kind of like a way of being neutral. And I think it's a really incredible philosophy. Yeah.
And I'm sure people could use that in business too. I know.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. I know Daniel Carter, the former All Black, what he'd do before taking a kick is he'd wiggle his toes in his boots.
Yeah. I'm here, like present.
3 seconds, he's not thinking about the outcome of the kick.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of the individuals who have those one stroke kind of sports like a shooter or a kick like that, they have always employed those techniques, but they're always on their own. Whereas how does it perform in a team environment or, something more broad is interesting.
You're in a board meeting and you just see me stop and
yeah.
Oh, he's wiggling his toes again. Yeah, here we go.
Exactly. It's when it comes to building a business or a startup or whatever, it's about the motions. Like, what are the things that You've decided the things that you think you should be doing, that's what your role is, that's what your purpose is, what you're serving, and detaching that from wins and losses. As long as you keep doing that and you believe it's right and it's your kind of duty, then everything else should take care of itself. Obviously, if that first premise is wrong, then it won't. But you don't know that until you kind of get in and do it. And that's how we've approached this company, because people are like, oh, it'll take you ages to nurture someone from the beginning to the end. We're like, yes, but eventually they'll buy a home. Like, if we do all these things, it should happen. So don't obsess with the home now, just obsess with each particular step.
Trust the process.
Yeah.
How do you balance studying, business, family?
It's quite difficult. Yeah, I mean, generally pretty good, but the last few years have been hard because we also have a bakery. My wife's also now an entrepreneur. We have a sourdough bakery in Grey Lynn. And she's a very, I guess, perfectionist in a way. It's done really well. It's like #1 sourdough, #1 bakery, Metro ranked it, all that kind of stuff. Just again, a testament to, I guess, the way we see the world. Like, if you're going to do something, you got to make it as exceptional as you can. And so that just puts quite a lot of pressure, on the family, where someone's waking up that early and then you got to take the kid to school and then you've got someone doing their masters and you've got someone writing a book at the same time. I mean, it is, I'm not going to lie, like the last 9 months, we definitely pushed it. The first thing my wife said when I came back from graduation was like, okay, don't even think about another degree. And I'm already like Googling. I'm like, what's the next one I'm going to do?
Chuck another log on the fire.
So I probably this year I'm not going to start another degree.
Good on you. Next year, though? Yeah.
Yeah. But as I said, I might write a book. No, I probably won't be allowed to do that either. So it's quite challenging. But we're just a small, 3-person unit. So we make it work. And I think taking breaks is really important. So we're going to Vietnam at the end of this week or next week. So Vietnam, Singapore, Hong Kong. It'll be cool. Take Finn to Hong Kong for the first time. Show him around.
Going to come back a tycoon.
Exactly.
Oh man, I know we've only scratched the surface on your journey. There's so many little avenues that you've gone down. It's really exciting to have you part of the property journey for Kiwis and trying to help them get into their first home.
Thank you.
I think it's an important part, giving back, and you find that with a lot of entrepreneurs when they get to a certain point in their career, they do just want to give back. And you're still on the right side of 50, so you've got a long time to go. Especially like you said, people normally write their books when they're in their 50s, so you've got a bit more to tell in that story.
Yes, I'm very excited, and I think the idea of Aera as giving back is an interesting way to think about it. It definitely is part of it, but it's also like kind of giving forward. It's just trying to help people be motivated, inspired, and believe in themselves to achieve this dream and unlock a pathway for them that gives them that confidence. And one of the things we found in the last few months is just being in their corner and giving them the confidence that there is a way, this year or next year or maybe even the year after, but there is a way and we're going to create it for you. Is for me really exciting because it does merge a couple of those worlds of like psychology, mental kind of fitness and execution, which is obviously not what you think about when you think about getting a mortgage. But to me, that's how I think about Aera. And that's, I guess, how we've reframed the brand as like a performance brand. I want it to feel and look more like Nike than a bank. And
so funny you say that. And I know you're not wearing the merch today. Once again, apologies for that. But the T-shirts that you wear and you see on your social media, it looks like a sports brand. Yeah. And the name, Aera.
Yeah. So, and, the fastest way to first home because it's about performance, speed, growth, and commitment. And so over the next year or so, I think more and more of the brand supporting material, info, content, whatever, will be more and more about that part of the process, like the psychological aspect of what it will take to get your first home.
I think it's a really important journey. Thank you for sharing it with us today.
Thanks for having me. And if anyone wants to get involved, as you said, we're building out this network of a few advisors over the next few months across the country. To partner with us, then drop me a line.
Fantastic. All right. And we'll keep one of these books to give out to someone.
Sure.
What do they retail for? What are we
35.
35 squids. All right. I'm sure we can flog a couple of those off to listeners. Thank you so much, Derek.
Okay, cool.
Cheers, man.
Thanks for having me.